Light and refreshing tasting, uniquely cold wave filtered. There's an iconic flavor for everyone. So grab a pack, grab your friends. Make the most of each day with those who matter most. When you're together with White Claw, every day is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. You just gotta grab it. White Claw. Grab life by the claw. Please drink responsibly. Hard seltzer with flavors. White Claw Seltzer Works, Chicago, Illinois.
It's the Chase! It's the Chase! Live 1 to 3, Monday through Friday on Fan Run Radio, Fox Sports Knoxville. Listen to Chase and his friends on WKGN. It's the Chase. It's the Scruffy City. Listen to his friends, and his friends are on WKGN. I'm always taking your calls on the Tennessee Vols. It's the Chase. It's the Chase. It's the Chase.
It's the Chase right here on Fan Run Radio, Fox Sports Knoxville, 105.7 FM, 1340 AM. Always streaming for free on that Fan Run Radio app today. Make sure you download it if you have not already. My name is Chase Thomas, and I'm joined, as always, right here on a Thursday, 1 to 3 in beautiful East Tennessee. Saturday Down South's own Ethan Stone. It rhymes, not intentionally. Ethan, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. You guys are probably going to realize this very quickly. I don't know why. I'm very tired this morning. I've been yawning all over the place, but regardless, I'm ready to talk some Tennessee football. NBA draft was last night, Chicago Bears, and whatever else we get into, man.
Yeah, no, you've been writing a lot here, getting ready for the season over there at SaturdayDownSouth.com, and you do obviously great work over there. So we'll kick things off with some Joey Aguilar versus Nico Iamaleava talk, because you wrote a column on why he will outperform Nico's 2024 season in 2025. We'll talk to Aaron Lemming of Bear Report to get a deep dive here on the Chicago Bears going into next year. We'll talk NBA, like you said, NBA draft round 1 reactions. My Atlanta Hawks just absolutely winning the last 24 hours. It's been a great week for Atlanta Hawks Nation. So we'll dive into that, some Grizzlies, depth updates there, and a curious pick in Portland, and a whole lot more. And your Jazz, your Utah Jazz, just saying, you know what, we're taking Ace Bailey anyway. We'll do that. Top of hour 2, we'll have Andrew Ivins, 247 Sports Director of Scouting, to talk all things Tennessee 2026 football recruiting. Excited to talk to Andrew at the top of hour number 2. We'll do G5 Garrett with Georgia State as he continues his series. He has a deep dive on his Twitter account, so make sure you read his piece there as he's continuing on our G5 summer preview, college football preview right here on the Chase as well. We'll talk Dalton Bargo, whether or not he might be back one final year for Tennessee baseball, and we'll wrap up with I think a fun series here this offseason, as you're a big college basketball guy, Ethan, an offseason college basketball guide for each team. You did a big piece that people can go check out on Saturday Down South this summer, and just kind of do it one at a time here around the SEC, and we'll start with Vanderbilt in terms of what to expect from the Doors in 2025-2026. So jam-packed show for you guys right here on a Thursday. Thank you for making the Chase part of your daily listen, whenever you're listening. We greatly appreciate you making the Chase part of your daily routine a month in right here in Fox Sports Knoxville and Fan Run Radio. So a lot of fun here each and every day, and I appreciate, like I said, you guys sticking with us. You can also join the program at 865-966-3435. Again, we're always taking your calls at 865-966-3435. 1 to 3, Monday through Friday. We have to start at the top here, because everyone knows how I feel about Jake Merklinger, Ethan Stone. And here you are, writing a whole column at Saturday Down South about why Joey Aguilar will outperform what we got from Nico Iamaleava in 2024. Make the case. What did you find in your research in the column, and what made you come to this conclusion?
Yeah, man, I'm intrigued with Joey Aguilar for sure, and not a slight to Jake Merklinger, not a slight to George McIntyre. I wouldn't be surprised, and I believe I laid out in the article as well, if at some point they're playing football for Tennessee this season. Because, you know, while I am intrigued with Aguilar, and while I'm more of an Aguilar guy now than I was probably a month ago, and when he originally signed with Tennessee and when Iamaleava went to UCLA. At the same time, I do realize that he has some obvious downsides as well. His decision-making kind of makes me a little nervous, but doing a little deeper dive into him and the makeup of App State's roster and what he was expected to do from 2023 and 2024, I'm a little more optimistic. I feel like that he can, at the very least, do better than what Nico did last season. And if he does better than what Nico did last season, then I think Tennessee's going to be in a fine place because, you return a lot of defensive stars. I believe it's 8 returners for Tim Banks' squad. And the non-returners, Omar Norman-Lott and James Pierce, that's Rodney Garner's group. I believe that they're going to – I always trust what he's got going along the defensive line. So you got that. I think they're going to have a decent run game again this year. So I think there's a lot to fall back on for Aguilar, and getting to him, his specific skill sets, and why I think that he can actually move the ball and put some points on the board is he's a good deep ball. He has a good deep ball. He has good deep ball placement. He is more accurate than Nico was last season. I don't think it was by a whole bunch. I want to think it was like 37 to 32% or something on deep ball throws. He was really good in the Sun Belt at doing that. The best in the conference at big time throws, which is a PFF statistic. The thing that I've kind of been mentioning a couple times is his decision making. The turnovers obviously are a huge problem. I mean, you can't turn the ball over that much at Tennessee and expect to be the starter. But I think Josh Heupel, Tennessee's system, will quell that a little bit. Joe Milton had interception problems too before he came to Tennessee, and he did not turn the ball over that much. He turned it over 5 times across 2 seasons. Hendon Hooker turned the ball over 5 times across 2 seasons, did it 5 times in 1 season at Virginia Tech. So I think this offense is simpler. I don't think he's going to be asked to do as much as he was asked to do at App State. And I think all that combined, that'll lead to a better completion percentage, better than the 55% we saw this year at App State. And I don't know. I think his confidence going into it, I think all those factors, you put them all into one, and I think there's a path to success for Aguilar. I'm not necessarily saying he's going to be Hendon Hooker year one, not by any stretch, but I think he'll be good enough to be better than Nico, and I think that's going to be enough to get Tennessee football to a ceiling where I think they could get 9-10 wins.
I think you make a compelling case here, Ethan, and it's unfortunate that we're at odds right out of the gate here on this, but I do agree when it comes like the best case scenario for Joey Aguilar is the big throw stuff, because the big throw rate, that is something that is extremely important in Josh Heupel's scheme. Obviously, like his ability to make downfield throws, to not be afraid of throwing in traffic. Now you have to complete those passes. You have to be accurate when you are throwing in traffic. But there is something we said about having a guy who is not afraid to uncork it in this offense. Yep. Now, we'll see what Merklinger and McIntyre and company look like, but Nico was not, or especially early on, he was not looking to uncork it. The deep stuff was not there. The best version of Joey Aguilar at Tennessee in 2025 is the deep stuff returns, the chunk plays return, because he is going to give Chris Brazzell, Braylon Staley, and Mike Matthews opportunities down the field to make plays. Mm-hmm. Like, that is the best version of Joey Aguilar. My thing is, if we get that version, you're also going to have to live with terrible red zone picks.
You are.
At times, you're going to have to deal with just some real mind-boggling stuff from Joey Aguilar, because you can't have both, or you can't have one without the other. I think with him, Joey Aguilar giveth, Joey Aguilar taketh, and right, like I think that's fair.
He's probably going to do a couple things that'll make you want to pull your hair out this season, and I said that at the very top of my article. I mean, this guy, you got to kind of live with the good and live with the bad. Take the good with the bad at the same time. But he's definitely a different type of player than Nico is. But I think he's more accurate than you would think. That's the thing that I really figured out, because what I did is I just watched a couple games. I didn't get any commentary or anything like that. I just watched the games. And some of the passes he's making are like, they're genuinely tough, and it's windows that I'm like, how do you even see that? And that's impressive. You know, I don't think most Sun Belt quarterbacks can't do that, I guess is what I'm saying. And I just feel like there's more reason for optimism than I thought 6 months ago, because when Nico originally left, I feel like a lot of people are saying, well, I mean, what a load of lost potential, right? Nico Iamaleava coming into year 2 under Heupel's system in the SEC, he's bound to take a step. With the pro upside he has, he's bound to take a step. But I think what I needed to realize, and probably what a lot of fans need to realize as well, is like, what's happened has happened, man. It's in the past now. Aguilar, what he needs to do is just be better than what Nico was last year, and I absolutely think there's a path to that. That's all I'm saying.
It will definitely look and feel a whole lot different. I think it's going to feel like 2021 offensively. I really do. And I don't know who ultimately settles down, but I think it's going to be rocky early on. I think you're going to have some wow stuff, and then you're going to have some, oh, no. oh, no. Like, I just
shouldn't
don't.
have done that.
No. And, like, we didn't really see that. Like, even Milton in year 3, like in 2023, like early on, like the training wheels were still on. Like you weren't throwing over the middle field early on. Like you think about that Texas A&M game where, I mean, that was one of the worst offensive showings we've seen in the high player. Maybe the worst. Like that was a brutal game offensively for Tennessee, and they still won. And hey, that's like one of the testaments of Heupel over the last 3 years is finding ways to win in just all kinds of different ways. And I think that's one of the most underrated parts of who he has been as a head coach here on Rocky Top. But I just I don't see, because of the timeline, because of the lack of chemistry he's going to have with all these extremely young players. Like he is going to be throwing to redshirt freshmen and then a up and down player who is your lone upperclassman in Chris Brazzell, who really needs to come on in year 2 in the system. And there's some room for optimism. I'm still not as optimistic as I was about Dante Thornton going into year 2, but him breaking out in terms of just being a solid Ramel Keaton type would not be the most surprising thing to me. Now, the star that people thought we were getting this time last year, I don't think that's coming with Chris Brazzell. But you might not need him to be that guy if Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley play up to their potential. I just think there's so many different things going on here that I just kind of wonder if Joey Aguilar is going to be comfortable being a machine and operating like a robot, because that is the best version of Josh Heupel's scheme. It's like you need to be able to be a robot, an efficient robot for 95% of the time. Now, when you need to break out of it, it's like the 5% that Hendon Hooker did not have. Like Hendon Hooker was so good and so cerebral and so efficient and so smart and never threw picks, never made mistakes really for the most part. Like he was just a fully operational machine in this offense. And that is still the best version. One of the biggest reasons why I'm a big Merklinger guy, because I just think he's the closest we've seen to that kind of just machine who's going to do exactly what Heupel wants, not take those bad chances. Doesn't have the best arm, but is accurate and can push the ball down the field as much as they really need him to. It's just you don't want to live outside of structure more often than not. And I think Joey Aguilar is just, it seems like he is more comfortable outside of structure than he is inside. And I don't think those quarterbacks mesh well in Josh Heupel's game. And we'll see ultimately how that unfolds with a short amount of time to get acclimated. But that's my biggest question, is how does he handle being in structure? Because I just think that is the best version of this Tennessee offense, is a quarterback who is a point guard who, I mean, kind of like who would be our NBA equivalent of this? It's like I don't want to say Dylan Wright, but like he does a little bit of everything. He distributes, like, I don't want to say 6-man, but just that 6-man guy who's not looking to score first. Maybe like Tyus Jones.
There we go.
Tyus Jones is what you want. Yeah, like that's who you want to be QB1 in this Heupel's game. Is you just want a guy who can put the ball in the skill position guys' hands, let them cook, don't throw picks, accurate. Like that's what you want.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Joey Aguilar is going to be able to live within that structure and that framework. But that's why they play the games, and that's why it's going to be exciting here over the next 2 months right here to see it all play out for that QB1 battle between Jake Merklinger and Joey Aguilar. When we come back here, we'll talk to Aaron Lemming of Bear Report to talk all things Chicago Bears and what's going on with them going into year 2. Velus Jones Jr., remember, Bear, right tackle. Darnell Wright, former ball great. He's still right there manning the right-hand side for the Bears. So a lot of VFLs on this Bears team, and we'll get Aaron's insight into what to expect from the Bears with Ben Johnson now leading the show as we continue on right here on hour number 1. It's The Chase with Chase Thomas, Fan Run Radio, Fox Sports Knoxville, 105.7 FM, 1340 AM, always streaming for free right there in that Fan Run Radio app. And we'll be right back after this.
On the all-new Fan Run app. Just search for Fan Run Radio wherever you download your apps.
It's The Chase right here on Fan Run Radio, Fox Sports Knoxville, as we continue on here in hour number 1. Thank you for sticking with us right here on Fox Sports Knoxville Fan Run Radio. Aaron Leming joining the program now. Bear Report's own Chicago Bears insider. Aaron, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well, Who is shining early for the Chicago Bears in mandatory minicamp?
Well, it's definitely been kind of a slow trickle. You know, it's brand new coaching staff, a lot of new players to the roster. So it's definitely been a mixed bag. I would say the defense has definitely got the better of the offense so far, which is somewhat expected. I mean, you got much more established defense at this point in time versus an offense, especially with Caleb Williams going into a second year. Almost a brand new offensive line and really just a much more complex scheme. So I wish I could give you a better answer, but, you know, so far it's been more of, you know, the defense getting the better of the offense. There's been some good moments for the offense. Caleb Williams has had his moments. Roma Dunze has looked pretty good as well. But, again, it's been kind of a slow trickle just with what the coaching staff is trying to do in terms of establishing kind of a new, I would say more of a new, you know, work ethic, culture, expectations, kind of setting all that out so that way when they get to training camp, these guys are in shape, ready to go, and they can kind of hit the ground running and really get the offense installed and kind of go from there.
Hey, just kind of piggybacking off of that, I've been wondering specifically about the running back. I'm a Bears fan myself, and watching the running backs last year, seeing Swift kind of come on later in the year was good to see, but you got to wonder what's going on behind them, and obviously with the Rutgers pick in the 7th round, what have you seen from them, and do you foresee them, you know, becoming something bigger in 2025?
You know, it's the running back stuff, you know, especially with no pads on is a little tough. I mean, so far, like you pointed out, Kyle Monungai, their 7th round pick out of Rutgers, has definitely looked more explosive than you would expect coming off the tape. Obviously, you know, he had a good career at Rutgers, but he didn't look like the most explosive back. It's going to be interesting to see because, I mean, going back to what Ryan Poles talked about over the last few months, I mean, they still have relatively high expectations, or at least they claim to, with Roschon Johnson. So right now you're kind of looking at, you know, DeAndre Swift being that number 1 back, but who's going to be the number 2? And, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how things kind of play out in camp and into the preseason once they get pads on, once things can actually get physical. And I think the big thing, especially with Monungai, is going to be how well can he catch the ball out of the backfield? Because, I mean, that's a big thing in Ben Johnson's offense. So, you know, I think in an ideal world, kind of going back to the draft, they would have landed somebody in the 2nd round with that pick other than Luther Burden. But unfortunately, you know, the board didn't really fall their way, and even going in the 4th round, you know, 2 guys went right before their pick, and they traded down. So I think it's kind of one of those, you look at all the moves that they made, offensive line, adding more receivers, Colston Loveland at tight end. I think that running back's kind of that missing piece that Bears fans are probably going to have to wait another year for them to kind of figure out.
Yeah, and you just mentioned Colston Loveland. That was going to be who I talked about next. Him and Cole Kmet, how do you see them kind of living together? I understand they're both really excited, as well as Ben Johnson is excited about 12 personnel and how they'll be able to do that with, obviously, DJ Moore and Rome out wide with Loveland and Kmet. But how do you foresee that going? Do you think they can work together, or do you think there might be some growing pains?
Yeah, well, I think anytime you look at a rookie tight end, for the most part, I mean, outside of Brock Bowers, I mean, for the most part, rookie tight ends struggle, especially in the first half of the season. And you're talking about a guy in Colston Loveland where, I mean, he's missed the entire off-season program rehabbing, coming back from, that shoulder surgery that he had. So, I mean, he hasn't even been on the field yet to really get an idea, especially as a rookie playing tight end. I mean, there's a lot to learn, a lot to go on. So I do think just because of, circumstantially speaking, it's probably going to be a little bit of a slow trickle with him kind of getting him in the offense. But I think that once everything kind of gets clicking, once everything gets going, and you're talking about 2 guys with 2 different skill sets. Obviously, they play the same position, but like you pointed out, Ben Johnson likes to run a lot of 12 personnel. And I think that when you look at what he was able to do with Sam Laporta in Detroit, I think that's exactly what they're going to try to do with Loveland. So I think probably the first half of the year, you're probably going to see probably a little bit more of Cole Kmet kind of playing that inline role, maybe slotting out wide a little bit. But I think as the season goes on, you're going to see Loveland as more of that receiving threat and kind of that guy that can stretch the field in three different ways versus a guy like Kmet, who's probably going to become more of just that inline blocker, short yardage guy. But, I mean, they have two solid tight end options, and I think especially in Ben Johnson's offense with a young quarterback, it's going to be very important. But I think they do play two different roles, and I think ultimately, you take Loveland number 10 overall, there's got to be pretty high expectations. But I think at least in the early going, it's probably going to be more of Cole Kmet because he's going to be established and he's a veteran. He's already been, he's already spent 3 months in this offense versus a guy like Loveland who, they could talk about mental reps as much as they want, but until he's out on the field and going through those growing pains, it's really hard to tell what he's going to be able to contribute early in the season.
Darnell Wright, first-round pick in 2023 out of Tennessee. You've now had a couple years to evaluate and watch Darnell. What do you make of Darnell Wright's game to this point? Has he been a home run? Has he just been solid? What would you make of Darnell's tenure thus far in Chicago?
Well, I'd say so far it's been a little inconsistent, and I don't even know that that's particularly a bad thing, right? I mean, the coaching staff, especially his first 2 years in Chicago, wasn't great. The offensive scheme didn't make a whole lot of sense. There was a lot of moving parts around him. I mean, there's been a lot of injuries on the offensive line, especially in the interior. There was some talk earlier on this offseason that they were, thinking about maybe, trying him on the left side. Thank God that didn't happen. I think with anybody, especially a guy like Darnell Wright, like his body and what he does well works much better at right tackle. And to move a guy going into year 3 after he's finally getting his feet wet and he's finally getting established, I think would have been a bad decision. But, I mean, ultimately what it comes down to is they have 3 new starting interior offensive linemen. They very well could have a new starting left tackle. So, I mean, he very well could be the only week 1 starter from last year that is going to be, on this offensive line. And here's what I will say. He had a pretty rough training camp last year. He got off to kind of a slow start. There was some speculation that he may have had some sort of injury that was kind of dragging him down. But I would say over the last, 8 to 10 games of last year, I mean, he was playing – I would say like a top 7 to 10 right tackle. So, I mean, obviously the goal would be, especially with getting a new offensive line coach, with a new, just a new offensive scheme as a whole, and Ben Johnson putting so much value into the offensive line that he kind of makes that step. They've made some comparisons to Penei Sewell. I don't know that I see that, but I mean, if he can solidify himself as the top 5 to 7 right tackle, I mean, I think that's pretty dang good.
Caleb Williams going into year 2 with Ben Johnson. With how much you've seen of Ben Johnson with Detroit and what's worked for Jared Goff, what about Caleb Williams' game is he going to have to adapt to, you think, the most to be an efficient quarterback with Ben in Chicago this season?
Well, and it's been a running narrative all offseason, right? Even going into the coaching staff hire and him being a candidate, a lot of people said, well, you look at what Jared Goff does well and you look at what Caleb Williams does well, and they're not remotely the same quarterback. And it's like, yeah, I get that. But at the same time, the best coaches in football, whether it's offense, defense, special teams, adapt to their personnel. And I think if you ask Caleb, what kind of quarterback do you want to be? He wants to be a pocket quarterback. Like, he doesn't like using his legs. And I think last year you can kind of look at certain instances, especially early in the season, where he almost kind of glued himself in the pocket. And it's like, all right, man, well, you've still got the athleticism to make some moves. So I think the biggest thing with him, and that's something that they've kind of been working through so far during the offseason program, is you got to play on time. Like, if it's great to have those Superman moments. It's great to have those moments where you're breaking the pocket, you're trying to make something happen. But a lot of Ben Johnson's offense comes down to timing. And if the receivers are in the right place, then he needs to be making those throws, and he needs to be trusting the fact that they're NFL wide open and not college wide open. So I think that there's a lot to like about the potential pairing, but obviously after such a tumultuous year 1, with going through basically, 2 different head coaches, 2 different offensive coordinators, technically 3 different offensive coordinators, even though there's only 2 play callers. There's a lot of kind of tearing it down to the studs and rebuilding it from there. But the talent's there. I mean, it's just really a matter of how far, how long it's going to take to click. Like I said, there were up and down moments, during practices, but I think that once they get into camp, once they get the pads on, once he's kind of had this, this month and a half to kind of really absorb the offense, understand the expectations, and kind of go from there, I think that's kind of where you're going to start to see whether or not this is going to work and hit the ground running, or whether this is going to take some time, or whatever the case may be.
What do you think is the most fair expectation for Bears fans to put on year one for Ben Johnson and company? Because I know a lot of folks, I mean, it's a tough division. It's going to be a brawl. We are going to see for the first time what Dan Campbell looks like without Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson. Obviously, Ben Johnson knows Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions very well. Green Bay Packers, we'll see on that front, but still hard to count them out. And then the Vikings being a huge wild card with J.J. McCarthy now set up being under center. Like, does this feel like you have to make the playoffs this year with how much you've invested all across the board and just the level of talent? Or do you think, hey, just get to 9-8, and if you miss the playoffs by a game or so, that's fine. Or is it just like, hey, Caleb Williams has to look like a first round, or has to look like a number one overall pick and a franchise guy, and then we'll go from there? Where is it right now?
Well, I think some of that kind of plays hand in hand, right? Because I think if Caleb Williams looks like, the number one overall pick from last year, it's a pretty good chance that they're at least going to have a winning record, right? And it's kind of a two-pronged thing, and this is unfortunately something the Bears have been really bad about doing, even going back to the Trubisky pick back in 2017, is they have that holdover coaching staff, and then after 1 year they realize, oh, wow, we made a mistake, and they fire him. So it's like you're looking at this from kind of two different angles. Yes, it's Ben Johnson's first year, but this is also Ryan Poles' fourth year as a general manager. He's won 15 games in 3 years. So it's like the expectations have to be relatively high going into it. I think at bare minimum they need to win 9 games. I think realistically for it to be labeled a successful season, I do think that, playoffs, whether that's 10 wins and a wild card or whatever the case may be, I think that that's what they would label as something successful, especially when you listen to Ben Johnson's opening press conference. He said, we don't see this as a rebuilding situation. Like, we're coming in expecting to win and win now. And that's been the consistent narrative throughout the entire offseason. The messaging has been very clear with the players. Again, like I said, Ryan Poles took this thing down to the studs 4 years ago, and it's time for them to start producing. And if you look at their cap situation and how they've kind of painted themselves into a little bit of a corner moving forward just with some of the contracts and stuff that they've done this offseason, to me, their moves signal like, hey, they're not going to win a Super Bowl in 2026, or more the point, 2025. But at the same time, like, you still need to start making the steps to at least get in the playoffs, maybe win a playoff game. But I think anything short of, 9 wins is going to be a huge disappointment.
It's Aaron Leming of Bear Report. Go check out all of his work over there at Bear Report, over there on the 247 Sports Network. Aaron, we appreciate you making the time for us today, and we'll have to check back in again very soon.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks, Aaron. Have a good one. That was Aaron Leming, Bear Report. Great stuff from Aaron as we continue on here on a Thursday. Appreciate Aaron making the time right here on The Chase. We'll continue our Tennessee conversation, some NBA draft reactions to wrap up our number one. Don't forget, you got Andrew Ivins of 247 Sports, Director of Scouting, coming up at the top of our number 2 as well. So stick with us. It's The Chase right here, Fan Run Radio, Fox Sports Knoxville, 105.7 FM, 1340 AM, and always streaming for free right there on that Fan Run Radio app. Download it today if you have not already. We'll be right back with a whole lot more sports talk here in East Tennessee right after this. Hey, y'all, Tennessee's It's the Chase right here on Fan Run Radio, Fox Sports Knoxville, 105.7 FM, 1340 AM, and always streaming for free right there on that Fan Run Radio app. Make sure you download it today if you've not already. You can also watch us on YouTube, Fan Run, Fox Sports Knoxville, streaming live Monday through Friday for all of our shows, 13 hours a day of great Tennessee balls, local content, and all kinds of other stuff, because we are in the doldrums of the sports summer here now on June 26th, Ethan Stone. But I'm not even going to dive into how silly the NBA calendar is, that they just had the NBA Finals and we do the NBA draft a week after. It's just, what are we doing? Like, let some time breathe and everything. But that's where we're at. And now we have the NBA draft round 1 take place last night, Ethan. And I got to tell you, you and I are both probably feeling pretty good. Your team, the Utah Jazz, they take Walter Clayton Jr., late first round, big value get. You just say, we're just taking Ace Bailey, and that's just what's happening. Like, I don't care. You're not going to the Wizards. I also love that there's a camp in the NBA coming in. They're like, can we get to the Wizards? Can we let's do that. Like, I'm dying to get my way to the Wizards. And it was like the same with Alex Sarr last year, where Alex Sarr did not want to go to the Hawks. So the Hawks just were like, all right, we'll just take Zachary Risachet. And he obviously had a much better year for the Hawks than Sarr did for the Wiz. But I do think it's kind of funny, like bad teams. Like, I want to go to this organization that's really bad.
Yeah, he said, like, Washington and the Nets, and it's like Utah's a better landing spot roster-wise for you than any of those, brother.
Will Hardy, I mean, going with Danny Ainge, Austin Ainge, and now apparently Avery Bradley, who was in the draft room, who I didn't know was like the vice president of personnel in Utah. So
really,
yeah,
Avery Bradley, that's crazy.
Yeah. Avery Bradley, yeah, he's in those videos.
Grizzlies legend, Avery Bradley.
I mean, Boston Celtics legend, Avery
Bradley.
That is true.
He was like first team or second team all defense that one year.
He was a NBA like early on before the NBA analytics revolution really kicked off. Like, he was one of those guys that. He was super controversial, not for like just like his personality or anything, but just because there were the analytical folks who were like, he's not an actual good defender. And then there are like every player is like, there's not a better on-ball defender than Avery Bradley. And they're like, well, the numbers don't bear that out. Like, his defensive rating is not. So he was like one of those guys who, like, the numbers did not love Avery Bradley defensively. But you ask any player and they're like, Avery Bradley was best defender I was going up against. So like that was like prime Avery Bradley was a interesting conversation among NBA circles.
Yeah, I honestly, the Jazz front office in general is just kind of filled with, like, Dwayne Wade was there for the longest time. I'm not sure what his role is with the Jazz anymore.
He's like in an ownership role. Or
yeah,
he's.
I believe he's in an ownership role. I don't know exactly what it is. Obviously, alongside Ryan Smith, but I mean, I can't be happier with how the Jazz drafted. I didn't actually think they'd be able to do it, but I was really hoping that we'd end up with Walter Clayton. I kind of wanted to take Trey Johnson over Ace Bailey. That's a bit of a crazy take to some, but I just think his upside as a shooter is really good. That does not. I was a little fearful that Jeremiah Fears was going to be the guy they went after, another inefficient non-defender. We just don't need that in the backcourt right now. But adding Ace, who, man, he has the potential to start year one, which is why I think it's so confounding why he didn't want to go to Utah in the first place. I'm assuming it's because of the bad light that Utah gets and Salt Lake City gets among NBA circles. But to those of us that have been there, man, it's awesome. It's a hidden gem. Salt Lake City's awesome. So I think he'll enjoy that. I think Walter Clayton will fit in right there. If they can if they can figure out what to do with the backcourt. I mean, you got Keontae George, Colin Sexton, obviously Isaiah Collier had a really good rookie season. You're just tripping over guys. Bryce Sensabaugh's back there, more of a forward, obviously, but tripping over dudes back there. They'll be definitely trading some here in the near future because the Jazz are just tripping over assets right now. But
no bigs though, outside of Walker Kessler.
You got Walker Kessler. Filipowski, I think, is going to come into his own. Larry's obviously Larry Markkinen. I'm interested to see if the Jazz keep him. That's one thing. Is will they trade him? There's a lot of interesting things for Austin Ainge and Danny Ainge to do moving forward with the makeup of this team. I'm interested to see it.
The Lauri Markkinen stuff, they should have to trade him at a huge discount because of how they approached Lauri Markkanen last year and all the games that he missed.
Yeah.
And just how that him going into witness protection the 2024-2025 NBA season. Sorry, you don't get to trade him at a high value. Like, just bad karma. I don't like it. I don't want Lauri Markkanen to be just a huge coup for the Utah Jazz.
The most obvious tanking of all time, by the way. And I've said it on this show before, Chase. The Jazz were not a 17-win team last season. Their roster could have won. I mean, I'm not saying they're excellent. They were a 30-win team, 40-win team that was masquerading as a 17-win team. It was egregious stuff the Jazz were doing to tank.
Nasty work. Nasty work. But I also just kind of wonder, because you, obviously, like you said, Keontae George you invested in. Jordan Clarkson, not a part of the long-term plans there. But, I mean, good six-man, been good. And it was also, was that one of the last remnants of that team that tried to compete with those I'm glad those are gone. Those Salt Lake City brown and orange uniforms. I remember Jordan Clarkson in that uniform more than any other Jazz player for whatever reason.
Gradient ones.
Yeah.
They've been just about every color under the sun lately.
It's better than those yellow jerseys, though.
Yeah, they've been yellow, green, blue, purple. Man,
at least they're going back to the classic look now.
The Red Rocks, I think that might be what you're talking about. I thought I kind of liked those myself. I thought they were pretty nice, but I understand why a lot of people don't like them. It's just not what Utah's usual color scheme is, but they change it every other month. So.
Well, they got it. They immediately knew they messed up. It's one of those early adopters where they're like, uh-oh. I remember it coming out immediately, just everyone making fun of that black and white and then the highlighter uniforms and that reveal, and you're like, I think it's an NBA rule where you can't change your uniform after after designing new unis. I think you need 5 years. I think it has to be something like 5 years.
They
that's
do that in the
unbelievable
NFL too.
If that's the case.
Yeah,
because that's what happened with the Buccaneers with the alarm clock jerseys. They were just waiting to go back to the old design. Same thing with the Browns that one time where they had the Browns pants.
The alarm clock ones, they also had that I remember the Bucks logo went too far down the helmet. I don't know if you remember that. But
it was a massive.
Yeah, it was too over the top. It was not a good look.
Other than that, they have a perfect jersey history though. But that's another story.
Yeah, but I'm excited. I mean, the Jazz now have they have some big questions to make about in terms of the rotation. But the Thunder also kind of made it clear, if you have a smart coach and you are able to have these guys bought in, you're able to balance just a plethora of guys that you're going to have to rotate in around, and it's not going to be the cleanest fit, and everyone's not going to get the kind of minutes they want to have. But if you're going for it and trying, there's no guarantees. You don't guarantee Collier anything, Sexton anything, Keontae George anything. You compete. Walter Clayton, you come in here and compete, and Ace Bailey, you're coming into a talented organization that is clearly now going for it. We'll see what that means for Markkanen and if he's part of those plans, but I don't think the plans for Utah are going to resemble what we just saw this past year. But the Atlanta Hawks, can we talk about the fleecing here? So I am so glad Joe Dumars is back in the NBA. Joe Dumars just quietly jumping back into the league, and then Brian Gregory in Phoenix. It's an awesome combo where the Suns and Brian Gregory trade for Mark Williams and then proceed to draft another Duke center with the number 10 pick in the same day. Fantastic stuff by them. No notes. 10 out of 10. No notes.
Why would you trade another first-round pick? You need those in the future.
Well, they have nothing. That cupboard is barren. They're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
They're trying to build a backcourt around Jalen Green and Devin Booker. One of the worst defensive backcourts we'll see in the NBA this year.
They're not committing to both of them, right?
Yeah, no, they're committing, and at least for right now. That being said, the Hawks, Kristaps Porzingis this week in a great 3-teamer. They also Anzi Sala, new GM. He gets Joe Dumars on the phone, Ethan Stone, and they moved down. Derek Queen, Maryland, good player, solid player.
Yep.
Probably a rotation guy. I'm concerned about the fit with Zion Williamson, but the Pelicans just made a terrible deal for Dyson Daniels and DeJounte Murray, and you see Dyson Daniels, most improved player this season. I love having Dyson Daniels in my life. He's a fantastic basketball player who is now part of the long-term core in Atlanta. Perfect fit next to Trae Young. They're let's do one more deal. Just a different GM this time. Let's keep calling the Hawks. Yeah. And I'm keep answering the phone. When Joe Dumars calls, you answer the phone. And they answer the phone, and they trade this pick to the Pelicans to move back. Not only do they move back and just get great value with Asa Newell from Georgia, probably a tweener. I don't know what he's going to be ultimately great at in the NBA, but I think a good rotation guy. Maybe he's John Collins.
I think that's definitely a good comparison, and I think there's a lot of value with Asa Newell too. At 23, that's
100%.
Amazing value.
And then you get the better of Milwaukee and New Orleans first-round pick, unprotected in 2026. The Hawks just got the number 1 overall pick. So if things go horribly this year with Trae Young and company this year, guess what? You might have the number 1 overall pick next year.
Seriously.
AJ time.
AJ time. I have not been this optimistic and just excited about Atlanta Hawks basketball since, somebody get Damari Carroll's music. Somebody call Kyle Korver. I'm going to have to stop myself from doing the caw in this studio. But I am so fired up.
If they play to their potential, they're a top 6 seed in the East.
Oh, 100%. The East is wide open.
Yeah.
The East,
when you have teams.
Celtics are going down.
Yeah, and there were some interesting picks last night.
Yes.
The Nets had 5 first-round draft picks and may have missed on every single one.
Every single one of them.
Yep.
I think Danny Wolf was probably the best one of the group, but I didn't love any of them.
And he was
either.
the last one, right? Was he the last one in the first round they took?
They had 3 in a row, 25 to 28.
They had picked him at 27. I think they had someone at 26 maybe.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of any of those either.
Well, there was so much hype about them where they're they're not going to just take everybody, and they're like, no, we're just going to take a bunch of guys. That's all we're going to do. We're just going to take some guys, and I guess, and there weren't even any big swings there really. It wasn't maybe this is their Giannis play. They're just going to take a big swing, and who knows? There wasn't one of those guys.
And the thing about the Nets draft also that I think was the worst is the very top pick, your number 8 pick. You go with Yegor Demon out of BYU. I had high hopes for Yegor Demon early in the season, and I watched him at BYU because BYU's kind of one of my alternate teams. And I watched a lot of Yegor Demon, and I don't see it. I don't see number 8 overall pick. Sure, there's potential there, but he struggled mightily in the Big 12, and I'm not sure I see that jumping, man. Not with number 8 if I'm the Nets.
No, but what a night for the Hawks.
Quite
unprotected first rounder. Who's doing unprotected first round picks in the NBA anymore? This is a classic 2004 trade. This is some fantastic stuff. You have either the Bucks, who might trade Giannis because Damian Lillard's out for the year. That thing completely might go off the rails. So it might be the Bucks pick, or it might be it's a win-win for the Hawks because it's okay, one of the Bucks or Pelicans are going to have a terrible season, and you really actually might luck into number 1 overall picks 2 out of the last 3 years.
Especially so with the Pelicans, because you never know about the Bucks. If they keep Giannis, they're probably not going to be a top 5 or a top 5 pick anyway. But the Pelicans, the Pelicans are going to be layup lines defensively. This is a straight up bad defensive team. You got Zion, and you pair him with Derek Queen, who tons of offensive upside. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't know about the defense, like you said. Don't know about the pairing. And Jeremiah Fears as your lead guard. The guy's 6'2" and not a good defender and an inefficient scorer. There's a reason I didn't want Utah to take him, and the Pelicans take him and Queen, both net negative defenders. I don't.
They just
see
traded
what
for Jordan Poole too.
I don't see what their plan was. I don't understand what the Pelicans are doing.
Move the Pelicans to Seattle.
Supersonics.
This is not working. Yeah, it's not working. Let's go ahead and close the book. The Pelicans, it's not working. Let's close the book on that one. But also not, because the New Orleans Pelicans are single-handedly getting the Atlanta Hawks back into the utmost relevance in the NBA. So actually, no, keep them there forever.
Yeah, keep them there.
Fantastic
keep
stuff.
Going, guys.
When New Orleans calls, you pick up. It's fantastic stuff.
The feeder team of the NBA, kind of what the Sabres are doing right now in the NHL.
There you go.
Feeder.
It's crazy. And then the Grizzlies. It was bold to go the sports talk radio host with your pick, but that's what they did, according to ESPN. They took Colin Cowherd with
Cedric Cowherd.
No. They took Colin Cowherd.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Wait, what now?
When the pick was announced, they said they took Colin Cowherd.
Yeah, they said Colin Cowherd on air. I remember.
Yes.
I didn't hear that part.
That's non-ball knowledge on me.
Yes.
Non-ball knowledge on me.
Cedric Cowherd, though, of Washington State, great story. D3 kid, moved up the ranks. I think he was in Duke, right? If he did not, if he withdrew,
he was going to play for. He was Eastern Washington, I think, for one season after being D3 or something like that.
Put out Wazoo for 8 games and then got hurt.
But good pick, wing guy, and the Grizzlies GM Zach Kleiman's very up front. He's like, I don't want to get his quote right, but it was pretty.
They worked him out like a few days beforehand, so the Grizzlies were in love with him. So
It's a good. It's not a full on 1-for-1 Desmond Bane replacement, but it's another smart move where they're just here it is from DeMichael Cole, VFL, UTK alum. DeMichael Cole does a great job covering the Grizz for the Commercial Appeal. He has this quote from Zach Kleiman, quote, "If we're being honest with ourselves, we don't feel like we're one guy away from winning a championship next season." So very upfront about where things stand with them, and they got a good value wing in Cedric Coward, who I think could be a plug and play guy who's going to help them right away, like an older player who just knows exactly who he is as a player and has gotten better at every stop. So maybe it's some Dalton Connect there, where it's just kind of rising up the ranks. And if he was healthy for all of last year, on a big team, what if he found his way to the SEC? What would we look at with Cedric Coward? But great story, and excited to see what that looks like for Memphis. But man, what a night, because you also have just so many different things with this group, and Portland with an all-time stunner, a guy who was just not on anyone's first-round radar out of China. We'll see.
Hansen, out of the stands.
He has merch, right? I think I saw that he
has
already.
Merch?
I think he has merch, and it's.
I just saw him getting drafted out of the stands, and did he expect to get drafted in the first round? I don't know.
Well, if you're not gonna be in the if you're not a projected first round pick, you sit up there because you don't think that you're gonna be picked.
Kind of another testament to him not expecting to be picked, I think.
Yeah.
It's like the meme, the guy pointing at himself.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
He's now the third Chinese-born player, though, selected in the first round, joining Yao Ming and how do you pronounce Yi's last name? What was it? Jean Leon?
I know who you're talking about, the guy for the Nets.
Yeah, well, he was drafted by Milwaukee, 6th overall in 2007. Goodness gracious, has it been that long? Was that really 2007?
He was hyped up too, right?
Yes, he was stretch 4. He was kind of in that Andre Bargnani zone where early on they were like, oh, stretch 4, and we're starting to do more threes, and he's 5 years post Yao, and it's like Dirk. I think he got the Dirk comparisons too. It's like, could he be Dirk? And it's like, no, he would not end up becoming Dirk Nowitzki. It's just like everyone's trying to find their next Giannis. Everyone's trying to find the next. Who would be the most recent one? Everyone wants Curry. Steph Curry is definitely one that people are trying to find the next.
Walter Clayton.
Jokic.
I know you want
Jalen Brunson more than Curry,
I could see the next
probably
Jokic
not even Brunson.
too.
That's another one. People are gonna. It's like Jokic he's a unicorn. There are unicorns for a reason. They're very hard to find, and most guys are not Nikola Jokic, and they will not be Nikola Jokic. Oh my goodness! But we'll come back here at the top of hour number 2. We'll have Andrew Ivins of 247 Sports, Director of Scouting, to talk all things Tennessee 2026 recruiting class as it's heating up here over the next couple weeks going into July, where a bunch of commitments are coming down the pike here for the Vols. So we'll get Andrew's expert analysis right at the top of hour number 2. Stick with us. It's The Chase right here on Fan Run Radio, Fox Sports Knoxville, 105.7 FM, 1340 AM, and always streaming for free on that Fan Run Radio app with Saturday Down South, Ethan Stone in studio on a Thursday. Stick with us. We have more The Chase right after this. It's The Chase right here on Fan Run Radio, Fox Sports Knoxville, 105.7 FM, 1340 AM, where we've got one of my favorite college football high school analysts of 247 Sports, director of scouting, making the time here. It's a busy, busy time for him, and it's a changing landscape because, Andrew, everything is trying to get done before the start of the new prep season, right?
Yeah, I always say, it used to be February was kind of like recruiting madness, and then the early signing period, it was December, and now this July 4th weekend, or the weeks leading up to it and the weeks preceding it, it's kind of turned into what I call commit season, right? I think over the past 5, 6, 7 days, 100 prospects have made commitments to Power 4 schools, and that's only going to continue for the next few weeks.
It's crazy. I mean, you have USC at the top of your rankings, and they have 30 commits at this present time. And then you have Tennessee way down there right now because they have 9. It's just the disparity right now across the sport in terms of what these classes are looking like and how many guys are in the boat. How much is just revenue sharing and now knowing the new number and how many full scholarships you're going to have and everything else? Is that going to be something that is going to be a big factor in the 27 class, or are you already seeing some ripple effects in this 26 class?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you said it, the rev share, the house settlement, what's going to happen with your roster size, what's going to happen with collectives and the name, image, likeness payments. It's funny, I was just at lunch with a college staffer, and kind of leading the discussion was, I think everyone around the country is trying to figure out how they're going to navigate these uncharted waters. Everything has changed, and it's not really from, 10 years ago or 5 years ago. It's changing from a year ago, and I think there's a lot of different strategies that are people are going to try out, right? You got to figure out. I don't think there's going to be an industry standard. So when you look at a program like USC, USC has been very active in the transfer portal. The Trojans, you said it, 30 commits now. I think they're going to sign 35 high schoolers, right? You remember those, many years ago when like Ole Miss had recruiting classes in the 30s. I think the big high school classes are going to make a comeback, and the reason being, these prep players, they're going to be a bit cheaper than the guys in the transfer portal. So I think everyone's just trying to figure out, hey, how are we eventually going to balance the books? And I think some of these programs are also they want to save money for the winter transfer portal window. So they're already thinking after the 2025 season, how do we address some needs there? So, yeah, I think this is going to be the standard. And when you look at Tennessee, you said it, 9 commits. Well, hey, they're also in it for a lot of high-profile prospects. And the thing is, those high-profile prospects, they come with a big price tag. So, you can't really pivot to someone else until all right, are we going to get this kid or not?
Speaking of 2026 class here for Tennessee, outside of the obvious, which is Faison Brandon, who is your favorite current in the boat 2026 fall commit?
Well, it's the other 5-star for us at 24/7 Sports. Gabe Osenda, Big Squish is what they call him. A kid originally from Alberta, Canada, grew up in hockey country. I don't think you can have a guy that's pushing 6'7", 330 pounds on skates. So he's found his way to American football, and he's a kid. I first saw him when he was a pup. It had to have been his sophomore year. He was going to Clearwater Academy International down in Florida. I traveled across the state to play in Miami-Dade, and so you saw this kid, and you're like, whoa, okay, he's got the measurements, and he can move. And last year we got him into the Navy All-American Bowl, kind of at the last second. That's when he ended up announcing a commitment to Tennessee, and he was awesome. All 4 days of practices, he was awesome in the game. And what's notable about him is he was an underclassman. It was the first year that we had juniors actually mixed in with the seniors. You said it. Hey, college football is evolving, so are the evaluations are evolving. And he was just super, super impressive all week. And then you get back into the tape and kind of confirmed what we thought, right? He's a big body on the corner. He can extend the arc. So huge fans of him and what he brings to the table. We have this term behind the scenes at 24/7 Sports. Gabe Osenda, Big Squish, he's part of the 9 Lives Club, right? These big bodies, these guys are going to get as many chances as they can. And I think Tennessee's got a good one, and they're pairing him with another former 5-star offensive tackle if it all works out. David Sanders, who's going to be an incoming freshman. I think those guys could be the bookend tackles for Tennessee for many years to come.
Yeah, and I haven't seen a picture of him standing next to Jeremiah Serd, because Jeremiah was gigantic from this past class too, and he projected as a more developmental guy, but he's just huge, length, wingspan, all that kind of stuff. You see Gabriel Asinda standing next to David Sanders over the weekend. You're like, goodness gracious. Like, Gabriel Asinda, I mean, it's not like a towering situation over David, but he's a big, big kid, and it's just Tennessee is stacking premier blue chip tackles for sure. Among Keys, Hyder, and Gray, though, for you, who Tennessee is still fighting for among those 3 5-stars, who are you most intrigued fit-wise with Tennessee of those 3?
I think you can make a case for, all 3 of those individuals. Savion Hyder, just with what Josh Heupel wants to do on offense, I think, your listeners, I mean, you guys are there in Tennessee, that they want to run the football. And I think a lot of people think Tennessee and it's, this aerial passing attack. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of between the tackle stuff and getting it to the running back. And I think he's clear-cut running back number 1 in this class. I mean, he's tested off the charts. He turned on the game tape. He's different than a lot of other dudes. And, we kind of joke. We call him Savion Blanc, just an interesting name, and that's kind of stuck with him. So he's one, and that recruitment, it feels like it's gone in a variety of different directions. And I know Tennessee just had him on campus for an official visit, so he's one that certainly would add some firepower. But Tristan Keys, to me, it's funny. We got this overtime OT7 event this weekend. A year ago is when I first saw Tristan Keys, and he had the college offers, but there wasn't a ton of hype around him. He was just this underclassman receiver playing for a team out of Mississippi, and I thought over the course of those 3 days, he really shined. And then obviously, he shot up into our rankings. I think if you look nationally, he had the best wide receiver tape of anyone in this 2026 class. When you talk about the juniors, he shows up at the Under Armour game, he's productive. He goes out to Hawaii for the Polynesian Bowl, he's productive. And I think he's a game breaker, right? I think he's a potential wide receiver 1. Scouting and evaluating these pass catchers, everyone's kind of got their different flavor for me. I love the guys that are long. I love the guys that are high hipped. I love the guys that can go get the football, and he can attack leverage as well. So I think he's the real deal. And the other thing that has this feeling good about Tristan Keys, hey, you take him and let's say you were to put him in the 2024 recruiting class. That's the one with Jeremiah Smith. That's the one with Ryan Williams. That's the one with Cam Coleman and TJ Moore and all those guys. He's up there, right? He would be in the 5-star conversation. So I know Faison Brandon is recruiting him hard, and there's some people out there, including my buddy Tom Loy at 24/7 Sports, that thinks Tristan Keys isn't going to sign with LSU. So certainly one to watch here. I wouldn't even say over the next few weeks. I think this one's going to be full of drama all the way through the early signing period.
Would you be surprised with Jake Merklinger or George McIntyre if they get thrown into the fire here this year? If Joey Aguilar is not able to operate within in the structure of Josh Heupel's offense, and not able to tone down an FBS leading interception total last year and be the kind of quick decision maker, keep the ball out of harm's way, and operate at a tempo that Heupel's comfortable with, would you be surprised if Merklinger or McIntyre got thrown into the fire and just kind of made it all work based on what you saw at the high school level and were able to just kind of not sink but actually swim?
Well, I got to preface it by saying, I didn't see the spring practices, and I know there was the spring game, and some clips have leaked out from that. I think if you guys were scoring it, all right, hey, McIntyre probably outplayed Merklinger a little bit. To me, going back to these guys in high school and kind of how they finished out their careers, Merklinger, it was on a high note down there in Savannah, Georgia. And I always thought he's a guy that fit kind of Josh Heupel's system, right? He could throw on the run, you can move him around, and he was also a tough kid, like, lower in the shoulder, throwing his body on some designed runs and scrambles. And he's not the biggest individual, but it's kind of rare to find that in the quarterback position. Now, I think there were some lumps, but for a guy that now has 1 year in the system under his belt, like that's one where I kind of have circled, okay, if things don't go as planned with Joey, you know, is it going to be Jake Merklinger? And on the other side, you know, George McIntyre is a guy that Tennessee identified very early in the recruiting process. And I know he's a guy that was high up in the rankings. The field kind of caught him, but we still think, you know, he's got the talent and the potential to, you know, surface as a guy that's playing on Sundays one day. And, you know, the thing for him, more of a slender frame, but he too is athletic. I mean, we're talking about a guy that also did it on the basketball court. And, you know, I've seen him multiple times throw on air, and it's certainly reason to get excited. I just think, you know, throwing him into the fire, even though, you know, Tennessee's certainly compensating him, I don't know if that's going to set him up for a situation of long-term success there. He's probably a guy that needs a year.
Can I do a quick rapid fire with you here in 30 seconds, Andrew?
Yeah.
All right. Hyder or Keys, better feel for Tennessee?
Not my lane, but I think, again, Tristan Keys, you know,
okay.
Keep an eye on that one. I think Tennessee's offense is appealing to him.
Do you like UT's strategy over the last couple summers of stacking OVs for the last couple weeks of June and getting that last visit as opposed to a little bit each weekend? Because that's kind of been Heupel's strategy over the last couple of years. Is like, let's stack and get as many big-time guys at the end, but you run the risk of guys committing before they get there. Do you like that strategy?
I think with how much recruiting has changed, I still think in getting the last face-to-face interaction, which is now at a negotiation table, is important. So I do like that strategy.
Final one for you. You watched Mike Matthews, fellow Parkview alum like myself, Braylon Staley out of South Carolina. They're both going to have gigantic roles for Tennessee this year. Who would you bet on more in this scheme, in this offense, to break out this year? Is it Mike or is it Braylon?
Well, I've always been a Mike Matthews guy. He was someone that was on my annual freaks list. I mean, he could have played college basketball. The player comp for him was Rashid Rice coming out.
Yep.
And you know, I think a lot of Tennessee fans are wondering, hey, why didn't he finish as a 5-star prospect? I mean, I just rattled off some of those guys that did finish ahead of him, but he certainly can play, and I think that's a generational class. So I would go Mike Matthews, but I did love Braylon Staley when I saw him at the Shrine Bowl right before he started his career there in Knoxville.
I love it. Andrew Ivins, 247 Sports Director of Scouting. You do great work. Cooper Pategna, you guys have a great podcast as well, and I love just reading all y'all's insight. And I know you're slammed with all the different camps and everything going on with Elite 11s and everything else. It's the busiest time of year for you, so I appreciate you making some time for the show today. But keep up the great work, my friend. Enjoy it, and we'll have to check back in again soon.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man, and thanks for having me on. And it sounds like, hey, maybe some good news for Tennessee here as we approach July 4th.
I love it. That's what we want. That's what we want because people are nervous, man. 9 commits going into July, it just makes people uneasy a little bit. So we need some commits in the boat, and they'll start feeling good.
Well, hey, I think Zay Anderson, the in-state corner, I'm a big fan of him. Reminds me a little bit of Jermod McCoy coming out, and then T.J. White, linebacker out of Mississippi, on ball, off ball, kind of like got some Jalen Walker to his game. So I think Tennessee's in a good spot with both, from what I've heard, talking with people on our network, and those would be big additions.
I love it. William Inge, man, putting in work at that linebacker spot for this Tennessee Volunteers football staff. Andrew Ivins, 247 Sports Director of Scouting, thank you as always, my friend, and we'll check back in again soon.
All right, thanks.
Andrew Ivins, fantastic stuff right there on the Tennessee 2026 recruiting class. He does great work over there at 247 Sports as the Director of Scouting on that front. And him and Cooper do a fantastic job there. So make sure you're locked in on all of Andrew's work this summer, and Tom Loy as well with their group as they keep track of all the movement and evaluations here this summer from Faison Brandon and Tristan Key, Savion Hyder. All kinds of big stuff happening here on Rocky Top over the next month or so. Stick with us. We'll talk to G5 Garrett as we get our Georgia State Sun Belt preview series continuing on. We'll talk some Bargo and whether or not he might be back for a year. Tennessee's got a recruit commit here from the transfer portal, so we'll hit on that here in a second. And Ethan continuing on his offseason college basketball guide here in the SEC as well to wrap up hour number 2. Stick with us. It's The Chase right here on Fan Run Radio, Fox Sports Knoxville, 105.7 FM, 1340 AM, and always streaming for free on that Fan Run Radio app. We'll be right back after this.
Take Fan
It's the Chase right here on Fan Run Radio, Fox Sports Knoxville. My name is Chase Thomas, and I appreciate you all for sticking with us here in hour number 2 right here on Fox Sports Knoxville, 105.7 FM, 1340 AM. Hope you guys enjoyed our conversation with Andrew Ivins of 247 Sports, Director of Scouting, here at the top of hour number 2. And if you missed it, guess what? You can check us out on the podcast front as well. So make sure you're subscribed on the podcast feed, whether it's Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, so that if you miss Talk Sports in the morning, Under Review in the early afternoon, or the Chase in the afternoon, guess what? You can go back and check all of our episodes and hours out that way as well. So appreciate Andrew jumping on in hour number 2, and Aaron Lemming of Bear Report jumping on in hour number 1. So always jam-packed with awesome guests here on the Chase. Still in studio with Saturday Down South, Ethan Stone, right here in the White Claw Hard Seltzer studio. Ethan, we now turn our attention to G5 Garrett as he continues on his G5 Summer Preview Series in the Sun Belt, back in our home state as two Georgia guys. G5 Garrett, Georgia State. What do we need to know about the Panthers, the Thurs in 2025? What's in store for Del McGee as he approaches year 2 in Atlanta?
Yeah, so they didn't have a great season last year, 3-9, 1-7 in the Sun Belt, but they did beat Vanderbilt last year, which was kind of a game that a lot of people forgot about, and they beat Texas State last year, who was also another Sun Belt contender. So they had 2 good wins that they're going to try and build on this upcoming season. I think a move that really nobody knows, but they hired Hugh Jackson as their offensive coordinator. So a lot of kind of NFL talent from that guy. He's been in a lot of different places, so I think that kind of elevates their offense immediately, just having that experience. They obviously do lose some guys to the portal, but they bring in some guys as well that could be extremely beneficial. They bring in Rashad Amos, a running back from Memphis, and then they're going to bring in Jordan Simmons, running back from Ole Miss. Didn't get very many ops at Ole Miss, but he was a pretty solid guy there. And then they bring in Robinson from Georgia, Branson Robinson, who was a former 5-star running back a couple years ago when he was in high school. Didn't really work out at Georgia, but to bring him over to the G5 level, you would expect that to probably work out. And so they're looking at definitely one of the top running back rooms in the conference, bringing in 2 SEC guys and then another guy that had potential 2 years ago, Amos. I believe he had 1,075 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns in 2023 before he didn't really get to play last year, kind of mixed into the back part of their depth chart. So if he comes into Georgia State and plays the way he did in 2023, that'll definitely help them. They returned their quarterback, Christian Velex, who had 2,047 passing yards last year, 13 TDs. He did have 10 interceptions, so he's going to have to cut down the INTs, but he had a lot of positive moments last year. And most importantly, they bring back their top receiver, Ted Hurst, who had 9 touchdowns and 17.2 yards per catch last year. He was in the portal earlier this spring. There was a lot of SEC, ACC teams that tried to go out and poach him. He then decided that he was going to come back. He was going to stay with Georgia State. He was going to buy into Del McGee, and he was going to buy into their offense. So that was really big for them to be able to keep him. And then on the defensive side of the ball, same thing. They kind of brought in a lot of pieces from the P4 level that didn't really get an op on the roster that they played on, just kind of submerged into the depth chart. But a lot of former, 3-star players coming out of high school, borderline 4-star players. And then they're going to bring back a couple of guys to their secondary that came back from last year. Terrific name, D. Icy Hopkins will be returning in the safety position. And then they're going to have Josiah Robinson, which was basically their best player last year. He had 32 solo tackles, 3.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. And then up front, they also bring back Henry Bryant, Fuchs Lewis II, and Ian Matthews. So up front, they should be playing pretty good. Schedule-wise, they'll start with Ole Miss. They play Vandy, Georgia Southern, Coastal Carolina, Troy, and Old Dominion this year on the road, with Memphis, Murray State, JMU, App State, South Alabama, in Marshall, in Atlanta, at Turner Field. Should be an interesting team. I don't think they're obviously going to be a contender for the conference or anything, but I don't foresee them going 3-9 again. I think they're definitely a team that has the potential to be bowl-bound if a couple things go their way. Makes the Sun Belt East a little bit deeper if they have a little bit better year this year, especially with the offense that should be pretty solid offense with the pieces that they have returning and a couple of guys that they get through the portal, especially in the running back room.
I love it. Del McGee was an interesting hire at the time. Hugh Jackson, was he at Grambling last year?
Where he was with the Browns. I think was the last.
That was his last NFL job, I believe.
Yeah, and then I don't know. I hadn't really kept up with him since that, to be honest.
Yeah, he was the head coach of Grambling from 2022 to 2023, right. And then he was the assistant GM at Georgia State last year, and now the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. That's a stacked staff for Del McGee, and he's a great recruiter. Like, he was a big time recruiter on Georgia's staff under Kirby.
They have the number 1 recruiting class coming in the Sun Belt, and they have the number 3 transfer portal class. So I mean, it's definitely they're moving in the right direction for sure.
Who would you bet on having a better year this year, State or Southern?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think Southern for sure this year. Southern's definitely they're going to be a conference contender this year, I think. But I mean, State's definitely. Like, I'm sure that'll be an interesting game this year. I mean, it's always, those two teams don't like each other. State versus Southern, they always have the big debate who's GSU and who's not GSU. But no, I mean, I think Southern, I think Helton's team's going to be pretty good this year. Georgia State, I mean, if you stack a couple more classes, like I said, they have the number 1 class in the Sun Belt for 2025. You stack a pretty good 2026 class. I mean, I think Ted Hurst coming back speaks volumes that they trust their offense. They trust what Hugh Jackson's going to bring. Del McGee, they like the staff. They like what they're doing. So, I mean, if you're keeping top guys that could have gone to the SEC and got a bag, and decided to stay at Georgia State, I think that bodes well for your program. So I think in the future, they're definitely a program rising. They're not going to sit around at 3-9 this year again.
I love it. Let's go next week. Let's dive into Arkansas State. Let's check it on Butch Jones.
All right.
And what are they? The Red Wolves?
The Red Wolves, yep.
Red Wolves.
There you go. All right. Well, we'll check in on Butch Jones and Arkansas State next year as we continue our G5 Garrett Summer Preview Series. Great work as always, Garrett. Make sure you're following him on X as he does great work. He's writing pieces, Ethan, on his X account. So it's great stuff. So I highly encourage folks to go check him out there. Garrett Armbrust on X. As we continue on here in hour number 2, Ethan Stone, Big Ten team. I know you're the Saturday Down South guy. You specialize in the SEC, and this is kind of a group discussion here. We talked about the SEC team, who was the sleeper last week. I'm curious who the Big Ten sleeper is this year, because last year was Indiana, right? No one had Indiana going 11-1 and being a CFP team, a team that hosted a college football playoff game. But that is what happened with Curtis Ruck and Kurt Signetti and company coming into Bloomington, and it was a big season for the Hoosiers. Who is the Big Ten team that nobody is talking about that you're high on? Let's start with you, Ethan.
I wouldn't say absolutely nobody is talking about them. I've seen them ranked 6th, 7th in Big Ten polls kind of heading into the season. But a team I have my eye on especially, and one that I think could surprise a lot of people, is Nebraska. I think this is going to be a good year for Matt Rule and company. Obviously, year 3 after coming from Baylor. And Rule has this kind of thing going on. I pulled it up just to reference it. Struggled mightily first couple years at Temple and then won 10 games back-to-back seasons. Struggled mightily first 2 years at Baylor, won 10 games in his 3rd season. And the trajectory of where Nebraska's heading right now, they 5-7 obviously in 2023, 7-6 last year. A lot to build off with Dylan Raiola under center at quarterback. And then they added a lot of people to help Raiola this season. Dane Key, obviously out of Kentucky, I think is going to be a great addition. Neziah Hunter, I can't remember where he's from. Cal, I want to think, had a good season at Cal as well. So getting him some pass catchers is massive. Key, I guess you could say, if you want to put a bad pun out there. And then, Dana Holgorsen having a full season, whereas last season he came in kind of halfway through the year. Nebraska started doing well at the end of the season. I'm curious to see how a full season of Dana Holgorsen calling the offense with Nebraska is. And then, obviously, Mike Eckler, former Vol, going over to kind of boost the special teams and get some of those, I wouldn't say issues, but just get that entire group fixed up. Not to mention, Nebraska plays a fairly tame schedule. They play Michigan, they play Penn State. Those are their 2 toughest games in the Big Ten. All the other games are winnable. I don't remember exactly what it looks like. I know they play Cincinnati first game of the season. That's a winnable game for Nebraska. I could absolutely see them winning 9 to 10 games this year. I could see them being a team at the end of the season, if they only have 1 loss and they're going into that Penn State game, people might be rumbling about a potential college football playoff berth for them as well. I'm not sure I'm ready to say that's going to happen, but I do think they'll be in contention for it. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people.
Raiola has the talent, and I also love their offensive coordinator hire. Like, Dana Holgorsen is a great offensive mind in the sport. I mean, Matt Rule made a mistake that any South Carolina fan could have told him was a mistake when he hired Marcus Satterfield to be his OC out of the gate there. So he got that wrong, but he also quickly pivoted. So it's like, all right, we're throwing that all out the window. We're going Holgorsen. And Holgorsen, I mean, everywhere he goes, like, you can have questions about his head coaching upside, but the man knows offense, and the man just puts together elite offenses, whether it's at West Virginia, Houston, Oklahoma State back in the day. Dana Holgorsen, one of the best offensive minds in the sport. So I think it's going to be a lot more fun. It's going to be different than what Matt Rule usually runs and his kind of style, but, I mean, that defense is still going to be really solid. I think they lost their defensive coordinator, Tony White, to Florida State, but I think they'll still be definitely in the running. They got a really easy schedule. Like, Nebraska's got a great schedule in 2025. But you know what's interesting? And my pick is actually the last game of the season for Nebraska. It's Iowa. No one wants to talk about Iowa. Iowa's not fun. Kirk Ferentz just hanging around. Iowa's not a fun team to talk about. However, Tim Lester, first year as his OC, he was a longtime Western Michigan guy, right?
Wait, they got rid of his son? Kirk
Yeah,
Ferentz?
he got fired.
Oh, yeah. Brian Ferentz, yeah.
Okay, it was a couple of years ago.
Yes.
Okay.
Tim Lester, though, comes in and is running that Shanahan-type scheme for Iowa. First year, Caleb Johnson, obviously, was a fantastic tailback for the Hawkeyes. They didn't have a quarterback, though. That being said, this year, they go out and get South Dakota State's quarterback, Gronkowski. And if he's healthy, which is still like a concern coming into this year.
I think that's being completely blown out of proportion.
That's
healthy.
good.
He's healthy.
Yeah.
That people were saying that like earlier this spring, like, oh, he's not healthy. Like, I think they just don't want to accept that Iowa might have an offense, to be honest with you.
The haters don't want the Hawkeyes to have a great offense, and unfortunately the haters might be wrong because the Iowa offense, I'm not saying it's going to be 2022 Tennessee, but it could be really fun. It's a pro-style scheme that works. It's a personnel scheme that I think makes sense for Iowa, and it's a way of revolutionizing them in a way that's also not going to make – it's not going Luke Fickell at Wisconsin where we're bringing in Lambeau and going air raid at Wisconsin. No, it's like we're still going to utilize our tight ends. We're still going to utilize our big body offensive linemen. We're going to run the football down your throat, but we're also going to have some play action. We're going to have some stuff with a quarterback who can move around in the pocket and do some stuff and bring us back to the Drew Tate years. Bring back Ricky Stanzi. Bring back C.J. Beathard of old. Brad Banks, that I don't think any of you guys remember in this room.
He was like a Heisman runner-up, right?
Yes, way back in the day. He was in that group. Number 7 for the Hawkeyes, but they've had a lot of good quarterbacks here in the 21st century. That being said, this schedule is great. They end the season at Nebraska. That might be a CFP playing game between the two of them.
Sneaky going to be a really good game.
That's a gigantic game. But look at who they get. So they get Penn State at home. That's a big coin flip game. They're getting inside the friendly confines of Iowa City. Minnesota at home, Oregon at home, at USC, but we'll see what USC looks like. Michigan State at home, Nebraska obviously on the road. At Wisconsin, but Wisconsin, I'm not a buyer. I think Wisconsin's going to struggle again this year, and you get, like I said, Indiana at home early. At Rutgers, that doesn't really scare me all that much. I think Rutgers is going to be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. The big one to me is Iowa State on the road. If you can win the Cy-Hawk Trophy and beat Iowa State, I think you're going to be undefeated going into the Penn State game on October 18th. And then it's like, okay, we're looking like Indiana 2024. And I think if they can survive and beat Rocco Becht in Ames, Iowa, I'm going to plant my flag. I think Iowa's a college football playoff team if they beat Iowa State, because I think they will split. They only have to drop 2 more games the rest of that schedule, and a 10-2 Big Ten team, I think, gets in. So Iowa just has to beat Iowa State, I think. I think they're in a really, really great spot to be one of the playoff teams. Everyone's talking about Illinois. I think it's Iowa.
I don't think the world is ready for an Iowa team that isn't inept on offense. And, obviously, coming from the FCS ranks, you never know how that's going to translate to Big Ten football. But I'm inclined to agree with you, Chase. I like Iowa heading into the season just because this is the most offensive upside it feels like they've had in a long time.
Yeah, so I think with my Big Ten sleeper, with my, limited research of Big Ten football heading into today, I think on the surface level, I like the Washington Huskies a lot.
Damon Williams.
Yeah, Damon Williams, exactly. Hyped up quarterback prospect. Jed Fish gets another year. He did a great job rebuilding Arizona. Of course, it's kind of been crumbling down since then, but I do like Jed Fish as a coach a lot. And then looking at the schedule, they get to host Ohio State. They get to host Oregon. They get to host Illinois. They get to host all their big games except for Michigan, where they do have to go to the big house for that. But I could see another 10-2 season for Washington for sure. I mean, if they got to upset Oregon or Ohio State or something like that. But outside of that, I really could see them going 10-2, sneaking into a playoff spot maybe.
I could see it. We'll continue on here, The Chase, on a Thursday with Ethan Stone of Saturday Down South in studio to tell us about his college basketball world view here this summer as we go to the SEC first with Ethan being a columnist and awesome writer over there at Saturday Down South. So we'll get his insight into cross-state rival Vanderbilt and what Mark Byington has got cooking here in year 2 with the Commodores. So that's how we'll wrap up right here on a Thursday in studio with Ethan Stone. So stick with us. It's The Chase right here on Fan Run Radio, Fox Sports Knoxville, 105.7 FM, 1340 AM, and always streaming for free on that Fan Run Radio app. We'll be right back after this. Hey. Wrapping up here on a Thursday with Saturday Down South. Ethan Stone in studio, the White Claw Hard Seltzer studio, right here on a gorgeous but hot, once again, day here in East Tennessee. I appreciate you guys making the Chase part of your daily listen, 1 to 3, Monday through Friday, right here on Fox Sports Knoxville Fan Run Radio, 105.7 FM, 1340 AM, and always streaming for free on our free Fan Run Radio app. Download that app today if you've not already done so. Every Thursday, we'll have our Ethan off-season college basketball guide update. This week, Ethan, the Vanderbilt Commodores. What to expect about with Mark Byington's team in year 2 in the SEC? Do we expect it to be just as good because they were a pleasant surprise in 25 for the Commodore fan base? But do you think it's something that they're going to be able to replicate? Do you think this is a step back year? And also, just what was your favorite addition this offseason for the Commodores?
Yeah, I think right off the bat you have to realize how much turnover there is on this team. They had 3 freshmen. They had 8 players out of the portal. Obviously, 8 players left. Edwards left to Providence. Their starting point guard left. And then, obviously, they lost a couple more teams from one of their better teams since 2017, Vanderbilt. And Mark Byington came in and obviously turned things around really quickly there. And I have reason to believe I think they're going to do even better this year. I think a reasonable goal for them is just to win an NCAA tournament game. Obviously, like I say, that hasn't been done for Vandy since 2017. I think that's very much within reason. I think this roster is good enough that Sweet 16 could very well be within reason. That a lot of people aren't quite looking at the Commodores, but I really think they have a fun roster. They got a lot of guys to the transfer portal that can really play. A.K. Okereke is kind of the biggest question mark for me out of Cornell. If he's good, I think Vanderbilt is going to be really, really solid because you got Tyler Nickel and Devin McLaughlin back, both solid players. Both of them are going to start. Nickel was a really, really good three-point shooter for Vandy last year at the 3 spot, and then McLaughlin played a little bit at the 5, but will probably be moving down to the 4 with Mason Nicholson out of Jacksonville State coming on. Nicholson is a massive human being, really, really good near the rim, really, really good defensively. I think he has a lot of upside. And it's going to be a theme with this entire team. It's just whether or not they can move up from their lower mid-major conferences to SEC basketball play. And that is always kind of a wild card, right? But I think Nicholson has the frame. He's like, I think on Vanderbilt's site he's listed over 300 pounds and sitting at 6'11" there. So Nicholson's a great addition for them down at center. I think he's going to eat the majority of the minutes there. And behind McLaughlin, you got Jalen Washington in the front court as well, who's definitely could have used that change of scenery coming from North Carolina. Struggled a little bit, obviously, in the back half of their depth chart. So I'm interested to see what he does as well. But I think the most intriguing area, and all of that is great. I mean, they've got 3 solid starters in Tyler Nickel, Devin McLaughlin, and Mason Nicholson. You also got Tyler Harris, who's a 6'8", kind of like 2-3 wing. Absolutely shot the crap out of the ball last year. He was 50% from 3 over at Washington, a really good scorer. I'm interested to see how he fits on this team. He's not one that I've circled and been like, okay, he's going to be an automatic starter, automatic contributor. But I do think he's very interesting just because of how well he can shoot the ball. And the rest of the backcourt is a little interesting because you got 2 guys that are really good shooters in Duke Miles, and then obviously with I think George Kimball was about 34% last year out of Eastern Kentucky, and then Harris can play a little bit of the 2 as well. So it's interesting to see if they'll run that lineup, if they'll run a bigger lineup with 6'8", 6'7", 6'7", with McLaughlin and Nickel both at 6'7" behind them. So they could have a tall lineup if they want. My biggest probably question mark, and this they're gonna have to figure out pretty quickly, is number 1, can you stay healthy in the backcourt? Because you got Frankie Collins and Mike James, who hasn't played in a year. Mike James obviously came from Louisville, spent some time, I believe, at NC State, didn't quite work out there, and didn't play all of last season. So he's going to have to kind of work his way back. But when he does, I think he's going to be a really elite offensive player for them. He has a bag. He's a downhill driver. I think he's going to be pretty decent for the Commodores. And then Frankie Collins, who played 9 games last season for TCU and really isn't a very good three-point shooter, but had some good seasons at Arizona State, had a decent freshman season at Michigan. Another guy like Jalen Washington, I think a change of scenery is going to be very big for them. And, Duke Miles is the guy out of Oklahoma. Obviously, Tennessee kind of kicked the tires with him a little bit. He's going to be in that backcourt as well. Really good three-point shooter. I'm not sure how much he's going to bring on the offensive end aside from that, but he's another option to plug in. And, I mean, the main thing, I'm just hearing myself talk here, and it's like they are tripping over guys that Byington can move around in different ways. Like, you got Harris, 6'8", could play the 2. Or, if you wanted to, you could kind of go a little smaller and prioritize shooting with Miles and with James in the backcourt. So there's a lot of interesting things they can do. And, even if some of those don't work out, like a Carrick out of Cornell, if he doesn't quite translate like some people over in Nashville are hoping he will, there's still a lot of options behind him. I mean, this is an 8, 9, maybe 10-man rotation that I think all of them can play. And, I'm not sure how high their ceiling is. I'm not sure there's a star player on this roster that, like, you need a bucket, you just give him the ball and sit back and watch Dalton Connect do what he does. I don't think Vanderbilt quite has that. I think James is probably the guy they hope for that to be. Maybe a Cherokee is the guy they hope for that to be. But it's just, there's too many question marks to definitively say this guy's going to be the guy. But with that much talent, it's hard for me to believe they're not going to be a top-end team in the SEC, which obviously Chase is, as we've talked about before, the SEC is once again going to be really, really good this season. So a lot of intrigue on the Commodores. I think this could be one of their better teams in recent memory.
Yeah, and I feel like the SEC is going to be good again. I don't think it's going to be as deep, though.
It's not.
To me, it feels like it's a lot more top-heavy than last year, where last year there wasn't a lot separating like the number 4 team from like the number 12 team in the conference. This year, I just feel like it's going to be like kind of that top 6 to 7 team is like kind of bundled together. But like I talked about with Ryan Shumpert on Tuesday, was it feels like Florida and Kentucky are in their own tier, and then Tennessee, Arkansas, Bama, and Auburn can kind of all, you can make the case, they all find a way. They have a good season. They all come together in a way that they join Florida and Kentucky in that tier 1. But then everything after that, and I think Vanderbilt's in this group where you're like, I don't know, man. I don't know about Vanderbilt. I don't know about Mississippi State. I don't know about Ole Miss. I don't know about Texas in year 1 with Sean Miller. I don't know about A&M with Bucky Ball. And like, I just feel like there's Missouri. Like, they've just been really up and down on their tennis skates. South Carolina is the only one you're looking at and you're like, yeah, they're probably going to be the worst team in the SEC again. But I don't know. I guess the other thing, too, that I'm kind of curious about from your vantage point, Ethan, for Vol fans, like Jalen Carey was obviously he gave Tennessee a lot of problems in both meetings against the Vols last year. He's a big addition. He might end up starting as the stretch 4 for Tennessee. Should Vol fans be concerned that Vanderbilt moved on from Jalen Carey, and did it feel like he just wasn't a great fit and he's a much better fit for Barnes' system than what Byington likes to do? Like, what do we do with that Vanderbilt did not, I mean, it's not like it may have just been Jalen Carey wanted to go and they would have loved to have Jalen Carey back, but I don't know. It's just kind of, it's always one of those things you raise an eyebrow where, okay, is it just he wanted to step up and it was just a better fit, or I don't know. I don't know what to make of that part of it.
Yeah, I think it actually kind of has to do with a little bit of what I was saying about their ceiling. Like, I think Vanderbilt is a team this season that, obviously they had so much turnover. This season, I think their ceiling right now is like Sweet 16. That's a goal that they can say, that's a high goal that we can go and we can
that's a big-time year for them.
It is, absolutely, for Vanderbilt. But I can't see them going any further than that because they don't have the star power. Now, how this ties into Carey is I think Carey kind of realized that and said, I want to go win a championship. And if I remember correctly, I'm not talking to Barnes on the daily like some of the reporters are, but if I remember correctly, Carey specifically said, I want to come to Tennessee. I want to play for the Vols because I feel like this is a place that can accentuate my strengths, and it's a place that, Rick Barnes has a history of winning here. Tennessee's gone to 2 back-to-back Elite Eights. There's no reason to believe that this season they can't push that ceiling a little higher. Obviously, there's some pieces that need to be fit together, and, you're missing Zakai, you're missing, fill in whoever you want, Chaz Lanier. There's a lot of turnover, but Chase, kind of like I was talking about a little bit ago, and as you were just mentioning, the SEC in general, the turnover around the conference, you won't find a team that has less than 5 newcomers from the transfer portal. That's just the way it is right now in college basketball. And I think Carey just saw his opportunity and said, Tennessee's going to be a good place for me. They need a guy with Igor Milicic off to the NBA draft. They need a guy that can kind of fill that role, that can shoot some threes, that can become a stretch 4 for them, and I can be that guy. I went off against Tennessee both times I played them. I know my stock has to be high for them, and obviously Rick Barnes thought the same, and obviously Rick Barnes and his staff thought the same about Carey, and there's reason to be excited about that for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be a really, really interesting year for Vanderbilt, and it's a big year for Byington to kind of build back. Like you have a lot of momentum. What do you do with it? Because Vanderbilt's just been wandering the wilderness in hoops for a long time, and obviously it didn't work out for Jerry Stackhouse there, but I don't know. I just think it is. I don't know. It's just something that should be okay. I don't know what they end up doing in year 2. They're kind of a mercurial team. Does he keep it going? And if he can keep that momentum, then things will continue to get easier for him. Because I do think in the SEC and where things are, they should be able to continue to be competitive. And we've seen Vanderbilt be a good basketball program consistently. What was that longtime coach's name who retired? Oh my goodness.
From Vanderbilt?
Yes, before Stackhouse.
Drew was
or
there.
before Drew also.
No, I know exactly who you're talking about.
Why am I blanking on his name? From Pittsburgh to what was his name?
Here, one sec, I'll find.
Goodness gracious! But he won consistently, and that's how long it's been.
Stallings. Kevin Stallings.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time since Kevin Stallings was roaming the sidelines for Vanderbilt, and but he won consistently at Vanderbilt. He was there from '99 to 2016, and so he's someone that was the last long-term answer for Vanderbilt hoops. And I think if Byington buys in long-term, then maybe that's the case. He had a 60% win percentage there. He went to 2 Sweet 16s at Vanderbilt over the course of his time there, around to 32. Like he was very successful at Vanderbilt. And if Byington commits long-term and is able to kind of build like what you have seen for the first 2 years, then we'll see. But, I think they're right there.
And I would also say about Byington, that's another reason. I went on this whole diatribe about why I think Vanderbilt's going to be good. Byington is absolutely up there with that reason. I think he's a strong addition for them. Won at James Madison, won 32 games at James Madison. And he had to also rebuild Vanderbilt's roster the first season that they got there. Like, Jason Edwards was a new guy. Devin McLaughlin was a new guy. Tyler Nickel was a new guy for Vanderbilt. He had to put that together, and it showed success last season. I don't see any reason it can't do the same this year.
Well, we'll see, and we'll continue on our college basketball preview series here with Saturday Down South's own Ethan Stone every Thursday right here on The Chase, as he'll be in studio every Thursday right here on Fan Run Radio, Fox Sports Knoxville. Thank you to intern Jay King. Thank you to producer Garrett Armbrust for his G5 Garrett analysis with the Georgia State Panthers as he continues on that front. Thank you, of course, to Saturday Down South, Ethan Stone, who's in here every Thursday right here on Fan Run Radio. The Drive with Russell Smith and the Bear coming up next, right here at the top of hour number 3. Thank you guys, as always, for making The Chase part of your daily listen, 1 to 3, Monday through Friday, right here on Fan Run Radio, Fox Sports Knoxville. Stick with us. The Drive with Russell and the Bear coming up at the top of the hour. And we'll be back with Omaha Productions and Rocket Insider Jack Foster tomorrow. Again, thank you all, and y'all come back now.